Hello classy people, this is Josh for the Top Hat Gamer, and this week I'm reviewing Until Dawn. The idea of cinematic, almost film-like video games that focus on your choices is nothing new, but they're rarely more than a novel concept. Quantic Dream's David Cage rambles on and on about engrossing stories and characters with emotions, but most of these interactive dramas deliver glaring plot holes and a false sense of agency. So does Supermassive Games' Until Dawn succeed where so many others have failed? Let's find out. Until Dawn takes place in a remote mountain retreat where 8 teens have gathered on the anniversary of their friend's disappearance. As the night progresses, things quickly turn sinister as the teens start to suspect that they aren't the only ones on the mountain. Until Dawn is a love letter to schlocky horror films from Friday the 13th to Cabin in the Woods, and the teen heroes feel like they're pulled straight from one of these films. While the characters start off about as cliched as possible, your choices as you play the game actually influence changes in their personalities. For example, Mike, the popular cocky class president, can become a brave romantic or an uncaring coward depending on how you play. The interactions between the teens also change depending on your decisions. Until Dawn does a decent job of keeping you guessing about what the threat to the teens actually is. One minute it seems like there's a killer on the mountain, next it looks like ghosts. There's even a supernatural monster element to it. This helps to keep the narrative engaging and entertaining for the duration. On top of having a solid story, the game looks graphically amazing, with some of the most realistic facial capture and solid animations I've seen in any game. It's accompanied by solid performances from various actors, with a surprising, unquestionably creepy showing from Peter Stormare. The game's cold color palette and claustrophobic camera angles combine with the eerie soundtrack to create a perfect horror atmosphere. My only real gripe with the game's presentation is the story recap that plays before every single chapter, regardless of whether you've been playing the entire time or if you took a break. It's unnecessary, unless you take a break and come back, and that should be the only reason these summaries play. Gameplay-wise, Until Dawn is reminiscent of other interactive drama games like Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls. Move around the environment and interact with various items during your downtime, complete fairly fast QuickTime events during action sequences, and choose some dialogue options when you're talking to other characters. This type of game will never win any awards for deep gameplay, but for what it's worth, the core mechanics are implemented well. Finding the game's various interactive collectibles avoids becoming frustrating, as any object you interact with gets a little glowing mark whenever you're facing it from a certain distance. Without really searching, I was able to find the majority of the game's collectible clues. Speaking of the game's collectible clues, there are a number of mystical totems that you can find that show you visions of the future, hinting at events that you can try and avoid or aim for. While these are a neat idea gameplay-wise, they make no impact on the story. None of your characters bring these visions up, despite some of them being super helpful and terribly out of the ordinary. I know that if I just had a vision of my death, I would be running to the next person I saw and screaming about it. Another of the game's main mechanics is the heavy implementation of QuickTime events. Whenever the action ramps up and the QTEs start flying at you, you're given plenty of time to complete them, but they come fast enough to keep you on edge. It's hard to say whether failing any of these will result in the death of the character you're controlling, but some of them certainly do, and it seems like any of the teens can die at any given moment. This is especially apparent when you're presented with one of the don't move prompts, where moving the controller even an inch could end in your death. It's easily the most tense gameplay mechanic I've seen in one of these style games. One of my biggest gripes with this style of game is the false sense of choice and agency that they give. Until Dawn seems to actually give your choices weight, by having even the smallest decision have greater consequences further down the line. For example, finding a baseball bat in the basement and putting it somewhere specific can assist you much later on in the game. Alternatively, favoring one character over another could mean the difference between life and death in a later sequence. This butterfly effect also seems to take character traits and relationship statuses into account. The actions you take as each character can change their personalities and relationships with other characters, which will affect how events play out between the group. It seems to be far more complex than I ever could have imagined. The game also sits you down in some therapy sessions with Peter Stormare, where you're asked questions about your fears and what makes you uncomfortable. I get the feeling that these are supposed to alter the game in some way, kinda like Silent Hill Shattered Memories, but apart from some visual changes to the therapy office, I didn't really notice anything. It begs the question, why are these sections here? I love Stormare's performance here, but unless the choices you make in the therapy sessions impact anything, these parts have no reason to be here. It's difficult to ascertain whether they happen before the story, after the story, or even if they're part of the story at all. Though I enjoyed the gameplay more often than not, the aforementioned therapy sessions aren't Until Dawn's only missteps. My biggest problem with the game is the regularity of jump scares. They're effective at bringing the tension of a scene to a satisfying climax, but they're used so often that they become predictable. It doesn't make the more threatening scares any less effective, but they do get old rather quickly. Until Dawn is a surprisingly engaging story where your choices actually seem to matter. Its solid gameplay finds a fitting home in this horror movie environment, and even if the mechanics aren't overly deep or engaging, the systems running behind the scenes are surprisingly complex, and make it feel like your choices are actually affecting the outcome of the story. I honestly want to see how differently this story can go, so I'll definitely be going back to this one. Until Dawn gets the Top Hat Gamer rating of excellent. As a lover of campy horror movies, Until Dawn has exceeded expectations with its entertaining story delivered alongside a spooky atmosphere and solid performances, despite a few hiccups here and there. The gameplay may not be the most challenging or rewarding, but the mechanics function as intended, which is more than I can say for other games of this type. I'm looking at you, Beyond Two Souls.
Ah, fuck it, give me the thing.
Which is game was called Science. Oh, check it out. Oh, that guy is just trimming those bushes in the back.
Oh my god, I fucking lost it.
Oh my god. Take it.
I just wanted him to pull it away and be like, psych.
Thanks for watching. I hope you found the review informative. If you missed last week's review on Volume, click the annotation. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a blanket to go hide under.